What if I told you that the Flintstones don't actually live in the past, but in a post-apocalyptic future? That's right. This theory suggests that humanity suffered a major collapse and had to start over from scratch. While the elites fled to floating cities in the sky, like we see in the Jetsons, those left on Earth adapted, rebuilding society with whatever resources they had available. And there's more. Several details in the show suggest that this theory might actually be true. From their curiously advanced technology to cultural references that shouldn't exist in the Stone Age, there are plenty of clues indicating that the Flintstones might be living in a devastated future. But does this theory really make sense? Let's analyze the clues. If the Flintstones really lived in the Stone Age, how do we explain their technology? After all, they have telephones, showers, cameras, and even cars, all working in a primitive yet surprisingly effective way. Take their stone cars, for example. They're powered by people's own feet, but they strongly resemble modern vehicles. This suggests that their society didn't invent the wheel from scratch, but rather attempted to recreate a means of transportation they already knew before civilization collapsed. Moreover, household appliances are basically trained animals performing the functions of refrigerators, garbage disposals, and even shaving razors. This could indicate that survivors repurposed technological knowledge from the old world, but had to adapt everything using the resources available, namely animals and stone. If we think about it, this kind of adaptation would be necessary in a post-apocalyptic world. Humanity would already be familiar with the comforts of modern technology and would try to rebuild them, even in a rudimentary manner. But what if the Flintstones aren't just an isolated society? What if another group survived in a different way, maintaining advanced technology? Well, that's where the Jetsons come in. Now we get to one of the most intriguing parts of this theory. What if the Jetsons and the Flintstones exist in the same world, but in different realities? In the Jetsons, we see a highly advanced society where cities float above the clouds and everything is automated. But why do we never see what the Earth's surface looks like? Simple, because it was devastated. The Jetsons could be the descendants of the elites who escaped the collapse of civilization, while the Flintstones represent the humans who had to start over from scratch on the ground. This would explain why Flintstones' technology seems like a crude version of our own. They still have knowledge of the past but lack the resources to recreate it in a sophisticated way. In the crossover episode between the Jetsons and the Jetsons visit the Flintstones by supposedly traveling through time. But what if they weren't actually traveling to the past, but simply descending to Earth? Maybe, in the show's universe, the airspace above the clouds is considered a different time by Jetsons society, a way to further distance the two realities. If this connection is real, then the Flintstones aren't just a Stone Age family. They're the descendants of survivors of an apocalypse that forced humanity to split. If the Flintstones really took place in prehistoric times, how do we explain their countless 20th century pop culture references? Throughout the show, we see parodies of celebrities, brands, and even movies that would only exist long after the Stone Age. For example, there are primitive versions of characters like Alfred Hitchcock, Alvin Brickrock, and even the Beatles, the Beau Brummellstones. How could these figures exist in a supposedly prehistoric world? This makes much more sense if we consider that the Flintstones are descendants of a modern civilization that was destroyed. They might not have written records, but pop culture was passed down orally and adapted over time. This way, the descendants of a lost world attempted to recreate entertainment and famous brands from their past, but using the resources they had like stone and wood. And here's another interesting detail. Even though they live in the Stone Age, the Flintstones have concepts like money, advertising, celebrities, and a structured society that closely resembles our own. This doesn't match what we know about actual prehistory, but it fits perfectly with a society that had to rebuild itself after a catastrophe. Even the name of their city might contain a major hint. If the Flintstones were just a cartoon about the Stone Age, their city's name would probably be something simple and generic. But bedrock has a meaning that might hold an important clue. The word bedrock means solid rock foundation, which is the deepest and most stable layer of the Earth's crust. But figuratively, bedrock can also mean the foundation of something, like the basis of a civilization. This leads to an interesting thought. What if bedrock symbolizes humanity's restart after a major collapse? After a possible apocalyptic event, society was reduced to the bare minimum, to its foundation, and the survivors had to rebuild everything from the ground up, literally. This would explain why the Flintstones still have structures of a modern civilization, but in a primitive form. Additionally, the name might be a clue left by the show's creators, suggesting that this society isn't really from the past, but rather an attempt to restart civilization over the ruins of the old world. Now that we've analyzed all the evidence suggesting that the Flintstones live in a post-apocalyptic future, it's time to question this theory. Does it really hold up, or are we just connecting coincidences? If the Flintstones take place in the future, where are the remains of modern buildings, destroyed cars, or any evidence of the previous civilization? In a post-apocalyptic setting, we'd expect to see ruins, scrap metal, or at least attempts to reuse materials. But the show never shows anything like that. The biggest inconsistency in this theory is the coexistence of humans and dinosaurs. If the Flintstones were set in the future, where did these creatures come from? The idea that dinosaurs were genetically recreated after an apocalypse seems far-fetched and unsupported by the show. The Jetsons Flintstones crossover episode isn't meant to be taken seriously. The special was made as a comedic adventure, without the intention of creating a shared timeline. The concept of time travel in the episode follows cartoon logic rather than real-world logic. In the end, this theory is fascinating, but the simplest explanation is that the Flintstones are just a fun, fictional version of the Stone Age, blending modern elements for comedic effect. The show wasn't trying to be historically accurate. It deliberately uses anachronisms for humor, without needing an apocalyptic explanation for them. Even though it's a cool theory with some strong connections, it's mostly based on creative interpretations rather than concrete evidence. The Flintstones were designed as a satire of 1960s life, not as a sci-fi story about the future. So, as fun as this theory is, the truth is that Fred, Wilma, and the whole gang really do live in the Stone Age, or at least in a much more entertaining version of it. But what about you? Do you think this theory holds some truth, or do you believe the Flintstones are just a fun cartoon with no hidden secrets? Share your opinion.